Hey everyone, I wanted to make an extra little video. This is going to be really short, but I just want to summarize some of the ideas that I think will help you whenever you're working on your emotion project. I know that this is the first animation that you're doing outside of a ball bounce, and we're kind of starting to think about character and how do we create a character and capture that character accurately in whatever forms that we're using. So I have some tips to help you aside from the index cards that we're going to use in class. Um, Follow these tips if you're stuck. This may help you kind of get the first ideas of your artwork out. First things first, what I recommend is starting with an action that defines the emotion. I know that for this project, I'm telling you to, you know, create an animation that demonstrates the emotion of a character. This character feels like blank. So if, let's say, you want to think about a character that's happy, right? Maybe this character is jumping, or maybe this character is bouncy in some sort of way, um, or maybe this character is wiggling. There's a bunch of different things that you can use. Whenever you do this, then you want to draw poses of that action. So let's just say like my character is jumping. I'm going to in here. And this is these little notes that I'm using on the side kind of are like what you would have in your sketchbook. Anytime that you're ever working on something and you're kind of stuck, give yourself some very simple steps. It makes things easier for you. So maybe my shape would start out simple and then it would jump up in the air like this and it'd be super happy in some cases. Now we're using three-dimensional objects. So these are my sketches for it. And then maybe I have another pose that kind of shows the character squashing a little bit and jumping. And then it could hit the ground, maybe on the edge, like so, and just kind of fall over. You can use shadow if you want to demonstrate what a character is doing as well. So you can kind of see it. And you can even draw arrows to show how the character moves. These arrows actually help a lot when we get to storyboarding. So then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll do another one over here just as an example. Let's say you have a character that's kind of scared, right? Maybe they're slumped over as such, and then maybe this cube can even turn around a little bit like this. There we go. And then it gets scared. And when it gets scared, the cube kind of bends outward a little bit and passes out or something. There's a lot of different things that your character can do, but you want to draw poses and see if those poses kind of work to your idea. Do they demonstrate the action? If yes, you should use those for your animation, and if no, you should draw new poses. Always sketch first. Always sketch first, because you want to make sure that an idea that you have just by looking at it in its very primitive form is working. If it's not working in your sketchbook, spending an extra 2 and 3 hours trying to flesh it out in your scene probably won't work. It has to be something that is clear enough and simple enough that if you just draw the most important parts of it, no matter where you draw it, it still holds up. This is a way that we save time in animation and a way that we're able to make more things. So, just like before, once I have an idea or something that I think is working pretty good, I'll go ahead and make a couple different layers. Sketch, and I'll make a corrections, and I'll make a drawing layer. or a line art layer. Line art is the last thing I do, so you never want to work on your line art layer until the end. I'm just going to work on my sketch layer, but I'm also going to use a couple other tools to help me, and I actually wrote down these tools here. Tools that help. A stopwatch. Everybody's phone has a stopwatch on it. I highly suggest you use this. And some type of reference. Now in front of me, I have a little Rubik's Cube just to kind of move around and get the idea of a character being solid. And I think this is going to help you for your project as well. If you have like a little cube that you have in front of you, this cube can move and change and kind of walk around, and you can think about what to do with it. So for the sake of what I have here and how I'm going to move around with this, what I'm going to do now is kind of make an X sheet. And we've talked a little bit about X sheets, but this X sheet is just an estimate for when I think those 5 poses of my character are actually going to occur. So I have the character on the ground, the character that jumps, and the character that falls. So maybe I can even separate it into 3 sections for here. Jump, air, fall. So the way that I do timing for animation is by either acting it out or having something in front of me that helps me imagine how long something jumps. A lot of people will move around a little bit. A lot of people will think. You can even just spend a little bit of time speaking to the things that you have. Now, I know that I don't have a camera, but I actually have a stopwatch in front of me. And as soon as I say go, I am going to make mention to those 3 things, and every time something happens, I'm going to make a marker for when those things occur, and I'm also going to stop it. So I have a general idea for how long my animation should be. So I'm about to start. Start. My character's on the ground. It jumps up in the air. It's in the air, and it falls. It touches the ground, and it lays there. And we're good. So I came up with something that's about 8 seconds, where the end of my animation, where it's on the ground, is at about 8. The character starts on the ground at 0, and the jump itself occurs maybe 3 seconds in. It's in the air maybe around 5 seconds, and then it falls. So since we're working at 24 frames per second, that means that for me to figure out which time frame these things are at, I just have to multiply the amount of seconds times 24 frames per second. So this jump at 3 seconds is probably at frame 72. This air is probably at frame 120. And this end right here is probably around, actually, you know what, better yet, let's not say probably. Let's just say exactly what it is. 192. These things in the beginning seem like extra unnecessary stuff. It seems like things that's going to take up extra time and keep you away from what you're doing. But honestly, this is you doing your research. This is you going out and seeing how big of a canvas you want to paint. This is you looking at your artwork that you're trying to draw and looking at the different angles and seeing how it is. The one thing we do that's different from everybody else in the school is timing. And having a good sense of timing will definitely help us with our animation. So let's start drawing. I'm going to take my sketch color that I'm going to make right here. And I'm just going to draw a real simple version of this. I'm going to start my character right here on the ground. For me, it might help to, well, first I'm going to make this a little bit darker so you can see it. Yeah. And I'll use, what's 20 look like? That's okay. We'll do 15. Okay, so I'm going to draw, just sketch a character on the ground. There's my character on the ground. And now, using my little X sheet, I can go out here and I can draw each frame of my animation where I think it'll be. So my next one, the character's in the air, that's about, or it jumps, that's about frame 72. So I'm going to go to frame 72. I'm going to turn on my onion skinning, pull that all the way out in hopes of seeing my character. It's real light on there, but I can see it. And I'm going to draw my cube in the air, just like this. And then, and so I'm kind of changing things as I go a little bit, but let's say this is my cube in the air, and let's just say, because my X sheet is an estimate, that I want it to end about 165 instead, once my character's back on the ground. So maybe that next little drawing, I'll just have it land right about here. What this allows me to do is basically pick where I want my character to start, stop, and finish. So when I see my animation, I can play it back constantly and see if it's working. That's not really working as much yet, but I did have a few different poses that I used. And one of the things that I need to do to make this character look like it's jumping is have it crouch. So maybe somewhere between this drawing and this drawing, I will create a new drawing, create an empty drawing, and I will have this character crouch down a little bit, maybe get a little bit wider as well, just like so. All I'm doing is basically breaking down whatever I'm trying to create into small chunks to make things easier to work with. I'm making another one so I have kind of a transitional drawing of the character jumping in space, and it's going to get a little bit wider as well. And I'm not really caring about craftsmanship at this point. Craftsmanship you don't care about in the beginning. Otherwise, you're never going to finish your work. You just kind of rough it in there. And what we use is motion first. Motion has to be good first. If the motion's good, then we clean it up, make it look good. So now I have this character. It's up here in the air. Maybe for my character that's up in the air, I'll have it get just a little bit higher. Just a little bit. And maybe it can even turn a little bit as well. Like so. Just to show how happy it is. So maybe that has like a little turn, and that little turn occurs in this little section. So then it can fall here and lay on its side at the end. And I want the laying on its side to happen a little bit faster. So I will add a drawing right here. Boop. And make it so lays on its side. Kind of like so. I know that these sketches are rough, but what this allows me to do in an early sense is look at my animation and see if my character is coming to life the way I want it to. You always test this first to see if it's working or not. The more you add to it, the easier you can kind of test and see if it's working exactly the way you want it to. And if it's not working, you can make changes to it. Okay, that tells me that this needs to be shorter. So I can actually go in here and I can click on this and drag this section out to make it a little bit shorter, which will give me a little bit more room in here to add a single drawing where the character gets a little bit taller before it gets a little bit shorter. The reason why we're using three-dimensional shapes is that it kind of forces you to think about bodies and how bodies move. You can make your character walk, you can make your character do whatever you feel like it needs to do to flesh it out. But I'm always working from the simple to the specific. It's just going to make things a little bit easier for myself. There we go. Move this character down a little bit more. And then now we have a little bit more movement in that section. I'm going to have my character inflate a lot just to show it to deform. A lot of what we're doing also is deformation. So if I add this huge drawing here of this character, it's going to make it look like the character gets bigger and then snaps smaller. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So this section lasts a little bit too long, so what I can do is make it a little bit shorter. I can use the plus and minus keys if you remember to take out frames as well. And I can also add and remove drawings. Now, you don't always have to have your onion skinning be this big. I know my onion skinning is kind of large and unwieldy at the moment, but what I recommend for you, kind of pick and choose how long you want your onion skinning to be. Have it like cover a few frames of animation, but don't make the mistake of thinking it has to cover your entire animation the entire time. Um, I've been using this for a little while, so it's easier for me to kind of map out and pay attention to different parts of my animation as I go, but sometimes I just want to look at a couple drawings. So it's easier for me to get a good look at how my character's moving and see how to change it. There we go. Maybe between this animation or this drawing and this future drawing here, I'd like a single drawing where my character turns just a little bit. There's ways that you can kind of map it. You see these corners of my artwork that I have? I can draw little corners for where I want my bottoms to change. Then I could connect those. That kind of gives me a way of better figuring out where my character should go. And I can even, if I really wanted to, kind of start with a two-dimensional image and add the three-dimensionality to it as well. There's a few different ways you can do this project depending on how things work for you. Maybe I want an extra drawing right here as well. Just kind of showing this character turning a little bit more. There we go. Like so. So as I'm working on this, it's pretty good. So what I can do now, I can use plus and minus to adjust this. Maybe I want the beginning to stay where it is, but I want the actual jump to be shorter. I can use my minus key to take out a few of these frames. Yeah, there we go. so that when this character falls, the falling is instantaneous. So now my animation was about 8 seconds. It's kind of moved down to now it's about, I'd say a little less than 5. That's a little bit more of a little bit more of a decent movement for my character. I can see the movement a little bit better. I can see the flexibility of it. I can see how the character is changing shape. That seems to work a little bit better for what I want to do. Now, I might want to add a little bit of going up and down here, a little bit of bounciness to my character. So I might draw my character a couple times, just smaller and shorter. Maybe I move my character over to the side a little bit so it bounces away. That could be pretty interesting. I'm going to add another drawing here of the character hitting the ground. Yeah, that's pretty good. Jump. Yeah. And then lean the character this way a little bit. And then have that character bounce up and out. Yeah. There we go. Just give it some room to bounce away. Maybe squash it a little bit more here so it gets a little bit bigger. And then jump one more time this way, like so, and up and out of the screen. Boop, boop, just like so. All right. So this isn't a whole lot, but we can look at this and see if this kind of leans towards a character that's a little bit happier, or at least a character that's a little bit more jubilant. You know, one of the things that an animator has to do is know when their story is changing and evolving and changing it. So my character might the story of my character might be more that it's active, or more that my character is working out, or that if we're thinking emotions, which was the original design of this project, this character jump. As it starts to move away, maybe it sees something that's interesting to it. Now, this is just a little demo that I did. But as you were working for yours, you should think very specifically about like the content of your animation and how you want your character to move. This one, if I'm to be honest, I would probably take a couple extra hours and tweak my story a little bit and maybe add some more things for it to be happy. Maybe like have my character jump happier in the beginning. Maybe in the end here, instead of my character jumping away so slowly, add a couple, take away a couple frames so my character jumps more. One of the things about a happy person is that they usually display a little bit more energy with the way that they move. And maybe the challenge with this that I have is that it's not moving fast enough. But those are things that you have to think about. Yeah, that seems like a character that has a little bit more movement. I could change this story a little bit and have my character maybe turn to the right, see something, and then this could be the character getting scared and running away as well. Don't use any additional props. Just use the cube itself. But you want to tweak this animation and have the character move however it sees fit. Usually, when I have something that I generally like, my next step will be to make corrections to it. And for you, the shift key might prove very useful in this project because it'll allow you to draw some straighter lines very quickly, which can help you with getting good craftsmanship with your artwork and with the lines that you're doing. But don't feel like you have to make every single part of your cube look organic, or I'm sorry, look very rigid. You can stretch this cube and move it however you need. I usually like to make corrections in red. So if I'm looking at this character and I feel like certain lines are a little bit off, instead of redrawing it, I might just roughly draw in where I want that character to be so that when I draw the next version of it, it'll be a little bit easier to work with. I do recommend drawing a uh, horizon line and some perspective lines may help just keep your character grounded in space. And I also recommend, if all else fails and you don't have any other ideas for how to like keep your character good, stay loose in the beginning, and as you get further on, when you get to your line art phase, save your line art phase for making the cleanest possible lines you can for your artwork. Um, it'll just make things easier. I work very, very rough in the beginning, so I don't waste time on perfection. Perfection is not something that anybody can attain. What we can attain is a good story, and we want to make sure that the lines and the artwork that we draw and the way that the character changes shape and moves fits into our ultimate story that we're using. I hope that this helps. I would like to make little videos just to kind of show you my method of working on a project. If this wasn't that helpful for you and you feel like you have a different idea you'd like to take, by all means take that. And if it was helpful for you, then that's good. Um, the beginning stages of any project are a lot of figuring things out, and your your story might change, your characters might change as you go. But one of the things that you want to make sure you do is add a lot of characterization to what you are doing. The more characterization you add, the better off you will be. I start off with something very simple, and while I may need to add a little bit more to this story, I stuck to the plan that I came up with before, where my character jumps up in the air and it kind of hits the ground, and I added a little bit more to it bouncing. I gave myself some test samples of where I think I should drop certain frames just to make things easier, and I changed that as I went using the plus and minus keys until it's as fluid as I need. Remember this: the final version should not be this sketchy. It should be a lot cleaner, like this. But it takes time to get to this, and it also takes knowing what your story is ahead of time. If you At this stage, when you're looking at your art, if your animation doesn't tell a clear story, you probably need to do some more work before you get there. Before I draw any more clean frames, I would have to add a little bit more context. I think the ending of the character walking away is pretty strong, but the beginning of the character just standing there might not necessarily be as clear. Um, I need to do something to make my story clearer. There's a lot of things that could be done, but I have to figure out what it is. And the sooner I figure it out, and the sooner I make it easier to figure out what my character needs to do, the easier it's going to be for me to tell a story with the pacing and the timing and everything that I want it to take. So, yeah, I hope that this helps. That jump's looking a little bit better, but still need to work on it. Anyways, I hope this helps. If you have any other questions, let me know.